where when I joined, we were reaching organically on social, at Chili Piper, it was like 4,000 people a month. When we left, it was 1 to 2 million organically every month. And like, if you stack this up on top of itself, it's going to be really difficult for people to compete with you. There's one other thing about this that I want to talk about that's super relevant to community marketing. Like, if you build an advocate, their audience is going to match their their title. So like, if you have an audience of VPs of RevOps, they're likely going to distribute content to other VPs of RevOps. So community marketing is about taking these voices, just pulling them from your own channel. Let's showcase our executives on our LinkedIn page. Let's showcase some influencers we're working with on our LinkedIn page, but also giving them the assets for them to showcase you off their distribution points. When you do that, these things stack upon each other, and all of a sudden, it's like raining Apollo. It's raining whatever company it is. So I'm going to go back to the chat really quickly and hopefully not leave everything again. Can we get a copy of the slides afterwards? Dean, yes, we can do that. As long as I don't somehow like break Goldcast during this. Okay, next slide. This, Dean, you're going to love this slide too. This is just a reiteration of kind of an influence map in action, but it kind of shows what's happening here. Like, your audience everywhere is that center goal. And then rather than being like, oh, let's distribute our message to them, let's run ads to them, you think about all of these other groups, your social accounts, your employees, your customer advocates. Within that, you have your customer advisory board, your tech partners. And not only do they all distribute to this audience, but they all uplift each other. An employee sees a customer saying something cool and they say, wow, this is my favorite customer. They are so fun in our onboarding meetings, right? You create this real authentic relationship that's genuine. And that is kind of what's buoying stuff. Part of what's cool as well is like, this stuff is really difficult to track. Like, I'm not going to tell a customer advocate, hey, talk about your success. Please use these UTM parameters on LinkedIn when you do it. Like, I'm not going to do that. It would be inauthentic and weird. But because it's sometimes difficult to track this stuff, modern CMOs don't want to invest in it. And that means you have this space kind of for yourself for now until community marketing becomes huge. There's less competition in those spaces. And then you see it because it shows up directionally as website traffic or through post-event surveying. It's like, well, yeah, everyone heard of us through word of mouth. Okay, so now we know that the solution to modern community marketing is to understand that the voice of the customer needs to be deployed everywhere. How do we find that voice? How do we steward those people into different levels of involvement? So there's something really interesting in fundraising, and my background is in political fundraising, and it's called stewardship. The idea is that like someone donates $1 to a political campaign or to something, it's like an environmental group. How do you build that relationship to the point where all of a sudden they're donating $500 a month or something like that? And Taylor Bogar, who's the former head of customer marketing at Apollo, really illustrates this beautifully with this slide. But when you think about your customer love, there's like the 80-20 rule, right? Like 20% of people will provide 80% of the value. And this is so true. But in order to get those 20% to provide that 80% of the value, first you need to steward them along a path. So step one, if you're not doing this now, really simple thing. Dean, tell your marketing team to do this. Are you replying to every single positive comment about your company on social? Are you? Because if not, think about this. You're at your like high school reunion and you're in love with someone and you say, Stevie, I love you. And Stevie says nothing. And then you say it again, Stevie, I love you. Maybe quieter this time. And you get ignored. Like, how does that make you feel? Like, it's crazy how many venture-backed companies that have tens of millions of dollars right now that are optimizing every little thing in their PLG journey are ignoring customer love when it shows up. So a very simple thing you can do is have someone in your org take every single bit of customer love and then thank them for it. And then ask them to make that public. Put it on your website somewhere. When people make a public commitment, it actually drives them up that loyalty path. And then all of a sudden, next thing you know, you have these incredibly loyal customers who have taken one step in front of the other until eventually they are super involved by joining something like a customer advisory board or a community. So I've built customer advisory boards everywhere I've gone. I'm kind of weird. Like, I generally build 6 of them at the same time. I'm going to go back to check on questions really quickly. Okay, we got no more questions, but ask questions. So basically, Like if you're thinking about your customers, you probably already have this. There's like a group of core customers that your CEO or your lead engineer or your lead product marketer goes to, and they ask questions like, what should we build next? What strategic feedback do you have? Things like that. Like if you create a formal structure around these customers, you'll be able to more easily deploy them as distribution points for your brand, and also like the guiding light for everything. Like I really believe that customer marketing is the new product marketing, and that the customers really hold the answer. This is how I build a cab. I'm not saying you should build it this way, but I generally try to create a customer advisory board based off the customers that people know, CSM, sales reps are providing the most value already. Maybe they're already providing references or referrals. Maybe they give all kinds of detailed product feedback all the time. But what I like to do is take those folks and unite them with another group that's similar. Let's take two groups, for example. We'll use Apollo. We can use the end users, so SDRs, AEs, full cycle reps. And we can take the RevOps people who use Apollo to basically manage their RevOps infrastructure, their lead routing, things like that. The reps don't really belong in the same room as the RevOps folks because they don't share the same problems. But if you can unite people by group and they share the same problems, what's going to happen? We're going to get back to that original definition of community. People who aren't explicitly paid to do so, freely exchanging knowledge and information because they hold the knowledge and information that's key to unlocking professional progression in each other, right? So you create this cab, and then you have a list of customers you can pull on. You can see some of the things that the different cab groups are utilized on the left here. And then the more deep the color, the more I think you could do it. Like your executives, like the CEO of Figma is probably not going to refer you a new client, but they will give you strategic feedback. But your top rep at Figma might go about and refer you clients because they're going to get commission for it, or they want to advocate for the software or whatever. Anyway, next slide. I'm going to actually go back for questions first and see if we got any more. Strategy makes me laugh. All right. Well, hopefully it's good laughter because you're like, wow, now I have the strategy. I'm just so happy with laughter. Okay. Community phase 3 is kind of to build spaces that hold influence. So we've already understood that the first phase is to understand where you need to influence folks and build a mechanism to capture that customer voice. The second phase is about deploying that customer voice across all of the relevant spaces. Phase 3 for me is about building physical spaces yourself. And there are a million different ways to do this, but essentially, like if you can find an opportunity in the market where there is an absence of community, there's a gap in community, you can go ahead and fill that yourself. Like what we found at Apollo was that there was an absence of a space that was safe, that was professional, that was exclusive, where sales reps could exchange knowledge with other sales reps, that there was kind of a gap there. So we grew this community. We grew it to 5,000 members in 6 months. Danny Howe is running that right now. Taylor Boger played a big role. And that becomes a space where people can derive meaning, where they can get social support, where they can get emotional support, where they can get career support. There's a real need for that. So what I would suggest is, like, as you look across your audience and your customers, is very marketing centric as well. Like say, hey, where's there a gap? Is there a need? Can I plug that gap? Your goal to plug the gap should be to provide value to a community, not sell your software. If you're not starting with providing value, it's just not going to work for you. But this means you could do events at large trade shows. You could do digital events. You could, build a customer advisory board. You could do a bunch of different really cool things there, and it's pretty fun. Okay, the slides after this point are in reference, but I want to go back to something at the very beginning here. This slide. So community marketing is about understanding where you need to deploy the customer voice as influence. And then it's about building the relationships and the processes internally so that you can deploy that customer voice. And then when that customer voice is deployed, people see it organically and they go to your website and they buy your product. This has worked for me at Apollo. We increased our revenue several 100%. We raised $100 million. We became a unicorn during a downturn. During Chili Piper, we raised $56 million, increased revenue several fold. In all of these cases, it requires a couple things. It requires you to relentlessly care about the customer. It requires your CEO to not need metrics on every single thing, or your CMO. And it requires you to have a product that people actually want to advocate for. If you have these three things, I highly encourage you to deploy a community led growth strategy. And then you'll find that you're able to compete in these areas where others aren't. Okay, I'm going to answer some questions from now on. And I can also just keep riffing on stuff. But Liza, what do you suggest here?
Yeah, we actually do have a question that is in the chat that you didn't cover, but you did cover most of the questions throughout the presentation. But yes, if anyone has any more questions, you can drop them into the Q&A tab. But in the meantime, so can you please share the customer advisory board source link?
The source link is me. I don't know. I made that myself. So I am the source link. Here I am. But I just created it in PowerPoint. Any other questions?
I do think that, like, since we're going to share the slides, people are going to be able to see that, so they can recreate something similar for their companies for sure.
Yeah, and we can dive into the customer advisory board a little bit more if you want, because it's really fascinating. Like when I was at Chili Piper, we created a customer advisory board, and then the idea, like a good litmus test, is like, does someone feel a sense of identity as part of this customer advisory board? And actually, what we did, let me see if I can find it here.
Oh, we can't hear you without the mic.
Here it is. So I actually took all the customers in our customer advisory board and we turned them into Pokemon cards, right?
Oh my God,
and
that's
in
amazing.
each meeting, basically in the first meeting, in the customer advisory board, we had a meeting every quarter, and then we had a customer advisory board health score. And this means that basically in order to remain in the cab, you need to take a certain number of advocacy actions each month, like providing a referral or a reference.
You gamified it. That's amazing. I love that.
And then it meant that the cab was always active, and they also had to attend the meeting. So in one meeting, we asked someone, what is your professional superpower and your personal superpower? And then 3 months later, they showed up on all these really cool cards. And it has their cab, it has their superpower, it links back to their LinkedIn. And then what happened here is the customers started sharing these cards on social for a couple of reasons. One was that they're freaking cool, but the other is that they were split by groups and they see the people that they respect and they build a community and an identity with them. So now we take a strategy where all we do is we pay a really talented artist, Caitlin Barr, to create a deck of Pokemon cards. It takes us $30 per pack to produce and mail. And then 75% of the recipients will repost that to social. Now, across 50 people, picking people with an audience, we actually reached a few million people organically with this campaign, and it led to like a massive upsurge. Now, one of the really interesting things about this is building a customer relationship, and it's deploying that customer relationship, and it's being authentic. None of that showed up in the CRM. Now, maybe there are tools nowadays that can do it. I know there are some, but that's one of the differences. Like when you give to the customer without needing that explicit attribution, when you give to the customer because you care about them and you want to celebrate them, they're going to celebrate you back. These Pokemon cards are really, really fun. One of my favorite ones was Lori Richardson. She's a mentor of mine, brilliant marketer, but she also runs women in sales and a couple other orgs. And her superpower is like, when this card's in play, all other women get a 15% bonus, and like the gender pay gap's eliminated. And it's like, if you really seek to understand what your customers want, it's not always software. Sometimes they want validation, they want access, they want to influence the roadmap. Carly, your question, we got everyone's permission ahead of time to use it. But we didn't post it without them. So we said, hey, if you're going to post anyone else's picture, you need permission from them. But 100% of the people wanted to do it because it's freaking Pokemon cards. Okay. Any other questions?
I think we might have one. Yes. From Chris, our speaker that's coming up in the panel after that. So how many folks are on your customer advisory board and who at your org is there when you have the meetings?
Chris, this is a great question. I have my opinion on it, but everyone has their own version of a customer advisory board or whatever. 6 to 8 or 6 to 10. You really want 6 people to show up in the meeting at list to get a nice percolation. And then I would try to create as many groups as you can from a capacity perspective, hiring a customer marketer to manage it. But it really depends on what the unique personas you're marketing to are. Probably there's an executive one and there's an end user one. So bare bones, I would create 2. And then in terms of who presents it, I generally like to have the customer marketing or community marketing department kind of lead the meeting with a presentation by the relevant product manager. Everyone's NDA'd, so they get a loop, they get a vision into the roadmap in the future. So it's a combination between customer marketing, who manages the relationship, product marketing, who liaisons with the product team, and product, who presents the roadmap. Each quarter we do these meetings.
That's great. I really like that.
And
I
there's a
like
gift
that.
every quarter, but nothing as cool as a Pokemon. Actually, there's a really cool one coming to Apollo Cab members that should be delivered soon. It's like a varsity jacket, and it says Cab on it. It's really cool. It's like a leather jacket.
Wow, that is
Yeah.
insane.
The idea is that like customers should want to grow as advocates within your org. And at the very pinnacle of that is your board of advisors. But just below that is your customer advisory board. And if it's an honor and it's fun and people are excited about it, then they're going to go out there and they're going to advocate for you in these communities because you've been a decent human to them. It looks like I'm running overtime, but do I leverage platforms like Slack to keep them in touch? Yep. Create a Slack Connect group for each subcab.
Yeah, sounds great. And then Carly said that like it's a bit tougher in online, not B2B communities, which I do agree.
I've always done all the cabs virtually, except for when I managed it for Apollo, for Atrium, that was in person. It is a little tougher, but there are ways to make it different. Like send everyone a bottle of wine ahead of time, or send them some nice nuts or cheese. There's great tools like that. A virtual toast is one of them. So it is more difficult, but there are ways to do it.
Yeah, that sounds awesome. You definitely inspired a lot of ideas in our viewers. Jessica said that your plans also look great.
Well, thank you. I water them myself. It was such an honor to be here and to kick off this incredible summit. I can't wait to hear the other speakers. I'm so excited. It was just an absolute pleasure. So thank you all for sticking through my technical difficulties and everything. And I had an absolute blast.
Well, I'm really glad that you enjoyed. I hope everyone enjoyed the session as well. We will be back in 15 minutes with our first panel of the day. So stay tuned for that. And I'll see you all very, very soon. Bye, guys. Bye.